It began on a warm evening in May 1993 in the quiet town of West Memphis, Arkansas. Three young boys, Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, went out to ride their bikes. They never came home. The next day, their bodies were discovered in a wooded area known as Robin Hood Hills. They had been brutally murdered, their bodies bound with shoelaces, left in a shallow creek. The discovery sent shockwaves through the small, working-class community. Almost immediately, fear spread through West Memphis. The horrific nature of the crime led to rumors that it was the work of a satanic cult. It was the height of the satanic panic and national hysteria that gripped America during the 1980s and early 90s. The town was desperate for justice. Pressure mounted on police to find those responsible. Soon, the focus turned to three local teenagers, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jessie Misskelley Jr. They were outcasts. Damien, especially, stood out dressed in black, fascinated by Wicca, and interested in heavy metal music. That was enough to make him suspicious in the eyes of many. The case against them wasn't built on solid evidence, but rather on fear, assumptions, and a coerced confession. Jessie Misskelley, who had a reported IQ of 72, was questioned for hours without a lawyer or parent present. Eventually, after significant pressure, he confessed, implicating himself, Damien, and Jason. But the confession was riddled with inconsistencies and factual errors about the crime scene, including the time of the murders and how they were committed. Still, police clung to it. The trial was swift and emotional. There was no physical evidence linking the teens to the murders, no DNA, no eyewitnesses, no forensic match. But the prosecution leaned heavily on the idea that the boys had committed the crime as part of a satanic ritual. A so-called occult expert testified, stating that the way the boys were killed was consistent with ritual sacrifice. The community's fear took the place of hard proof. In 1994, all three were convicted. Damien Echols was sentenced to death. Jason Baldwin and Jessie Misskelley received life without parole. For many, it felt like justice had been served. But for others, especially outside West Memphis, something about the case didn't add up. Soon, whispers of wrongful conviction began to grow louder. Over the years, supporters of the West Memphis Three emerged from around the world. Celebrities, musicians, and legal advocates began looking into the case. Documentary filmmakers Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky released Paradise Lost, a groundbreaking HBO documentary that revealed the weaknesses in the prosecution's case and raised serious doubts about the teenagers' guilt. It painted a portrait of a rush to judgment, based more on who the boys were than what they had done. As public awareness grew, so did the scrutiny. DNA testing in the early 2000s found no link between the three teens and the crime scene. Instead, DNA from a hair found in the knot used to tie one of the victims pointed to Terry Hobbs, the stepfather of one of the boys. Though this didn't directly implicate him, it further cast doubt on the original convictions. Despite growing evidence of their innocence, the state of Arkansas resisted reopening the case. Years passed. Appeals were filed and denied. But the court of public opinion had shifted. The West Memphis Three had become symbols of injustice. Their case sparked debates about coerced confessions, prosecutorial misconduct, and the dangers of moral panic. Finally, in 2011, after 18 years behind bars, a legal maneuver known as an Alford plea allowed the three men to walk free. Under the plea, they could maintain their innocence while officially pleading guilty, enabling the state to avoid admitting wrongdoing while still releasing them. It was a bittersweet victory. Freedom, yes, but not full exoneration. They had to carry the weight of a guilty plea for a crime they insisted they did not commit. Since their release, Damien, Jason, and Jessie have tried to rebuild their lives. Damien wrote a memoir and became an outspoken advocate for prison reform in the wrongfully convicted. Jason pursued higher education and works with innocence projects. Jessie, quieter and more reclusive, has stayed mostly out of the spotlight. But all three are still marked not just by the years stolen from them, but by the loss of the children at the heart of it all. The West Memphis 3 case is more than a tragedy. It's a cautionary tale. A story about how fear can override reason, about how appearances can become evidence, about how a flawed system can break lives and how, sometimes, truth takes decades to catch up. It reminds us to ask harder questions, demand better evidence, and never accept justice delivered in haste. Even now, the question remains who really killed those 3 little boys. The answer, decades later, is still elusive. And until the truth is known, the shadow of Robin Hood Hills will always linger. Though free, the West Memphis 3 still face the burdens of injustice. The Alford plea, while securing their release, denied them the full vindication that could come from a retrial or exoneration. Critics argue that the plea served more to protect the state from liability than to deliver justice. For the men, freedom came at a cost, one that continues to define their lives. Their names remain associated with a horrific crime, despite the growing consensus of their innocence. For many, this outcome is not justice, it's damage control. The case also sparked wider conversations about the American justice system. Legal experts and activists pointed to the flaws exposed, the danger of coerced confessions, the misuse of expert testimony, and how public pressure can lead to rushed and reckless prosecution. It highlighted how the appearance of guilt, especially for those who don't fit societal norms, can be more powerful than the presumption of innocence. These issues aren't confined to West Memphis, they're systemic, and the story of the 3 became a rallying cry for broader reform. Decades after the crime, the murders of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers remain technically unsolved. The original investigation is widely regarded as mishandled, and new leads remain scarce.